Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is February 4th. Today we're going to take a look at the system moving into the Pacific Northwest. We'll also, of course, take a look at our extended forecast. We'll take a look around the rest of the country too. We got some Santa Ana winds going for Southern California as high pressure builds over the Great Basin there. And you can see we've got that storm moving up the East Coast, still not out of the way yet. They've got some winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories still for areas up in the Northeast. Check this out on the visible satellite. You can see all the snow that fell from the front range of the Rockies out towards Texas, pretty far south actually. Oklahoma, Kansas, mainly left Nebraska alone for the most part. There you can see that snow continues all the way up towards the Midwest. And check this out, as the sun gets overhead, you can see the melting occurring as the satellite loop runs. So just jumping right into it here, you can see that storm moving up the East Coast with all the winter storm warnings active. There's some hard freeze warning there for areas of Dallas, and there's a hard freeze watch there further south. You can see the wind chill advisories to the Dakotas and areas of Montana, and high wind warnings for areas of Montana. Again, that seems to be going on quite a bit. An active winter going on through there as these cold air intrusions kind of move down east of the Rockies there and continue to impact Montana. You can see this precipitation moving into the Pacific Northwest here. We've got winter weather advisory we'll look at a little bit closer. And we've got high wind warnings and wind advisories for the Santa Ana winds in California. We'll take a look at that in a little bit more detail here coming up. So again, this is basically the same map, and we'll just go ahead and jump right into the Santa Ana winds here. You can see gust 45 to 50 for LA County, and then this is going to warm up pretty good this week, and I'll show you why that occurs. But yeah, heads up for possible down tree limbs and power lines, and they're even talking about possible heat stress if exposed or those susceptible. So ladies and gentlemen, that's winter in Southern California for you. So let's just look at the temperature map here. You can see how things are fairly mild along the Southland here and much chillier up over the higher terrain of the West here. And if we put this into motion, notice how it warms up quite a bit through Southern California. You're starting to get well up into the 60s, even towards the 70-degree mark. And this is because this high pressure out here over the basin pushes this air out, and it takes a long journey moving over terrain, down into valleys. And as it does that, it compresses and it loses its moisture. And by the time it gets out to the Southern California, it's very dry and it's very warm. So that's what the Santa Ana winds are. And they move through these canyons and bring some pretty impressive wind speeds at times. So let's take a look at that. This is Friday morning. You can see these winds start to pick up, and you can see this path that they take through Nevada, through the deserts of California, over the mountains and into Southern California there. And you can see these winds moving through the canyons and all the way out to the open ocean. And going right back out to the rest of the country before we go back to the Pacific Northwest. So here is way down south in Corpus Christi, Texas. Check out some of these temperatures overnight tonight, all the way down to the low 20s. They got a hard freeze watch for those areas, up to 12 hours across inland areas below freezing. So heads up if you've got interest down there in Texas. And we've got a hard freeze warning for areas of Dallas and mostly off to the west and southwest. High temperatures today. Check this out. They're not going to get above freezing most areas through areas of Texas. So nice and chilly. Back up to the Pacific Northwest now. As you can see, the lowlands of eastern Washington are not expecting much snow. Spokane, just a skiff, a little bit, generally less than an inch. But you can see as you go into the terrain higher off to the east or through the Cascades, we're expecting more snowfall here. Winter weather advisory for the Cascades here. And high wind warning again for areas of the Rockies and the east slopes and on into Montana there. And be prepared for mountain impacts if you're traveling out of Washington or Idaho eastbound through Montana. And here's where the strong winds are supposed to occur. You can see some gusts to 75 miles per hour expected along the Rocky Mountain Front Range and on into the rest of Montana, actually pretty gusty too, up to 70 miles per hour there. And light snow, mainly higher terrain through Montana. So just heads up if you're on the travel eastbound out of Washington, Oregon into Montana areas. And here we go. Winter weather advisory, Cascades Central, all the way up towards the Canadian border there. And generally above 3,500 feet, 4 to 6 inches, some gusty winds. So mainly in the backcountry, mainly Stevens Pass north. This is not a big impact for Snoqualmie Pass as of right now. So, okay, let's take a look at what's coming up here with our system today and the one on into Monday. So as you can see now, you can see the big winds on the higher terrain there through Montana. If I put this into motion here, you can see those winds extend off the Rockies there in Montana. You can see a little bit of gusty wind coming through the Puget Sound. It's not going to be anything out of the ordinary. You can see some gusty winds in the higher terrain, so heads up for that if you're in the backcountry. And you can see these winds pick up a little bit on the east slopes of the Cascades here as this frontal system moves through tonight. You can see these wind speeds pick up, and you can see these high winds going all the way through Montana at this point. So watch out if you're in the high country, back country, in the higher terrain there through Cascades all the way through the Rocky Mountains there. And you can see this westerly surge as the frontal system moves through, this westerly surge down the Strait of Juan de Fuca here through western Washington. And as we put that into motion, you can see a weak convergence zone signature here, Puget Sound convergence zone, as that westerly wind meets up with the southwesterly wind there and gives us some precipitation through here this evening. And then as we put that into motion, you can see winds die down over western Washington and the Cascades. And there'll be another frontal system coming in on Monday. It's also going to be very weak. We'll take a look at that here in a minute. This is the HRRR just showing the same thing. It is showing that convergence zone activity also. Shows the westerly down the strait. Just wanted to point that out. The NAM and the HRRR are in agreement there. And here is the radar. Let's take a look at this. So here goes that weak frontal system. You can see just very light amounts really in the lowlands. More for the mountains. You can see why they have the winter weather advisory for areas Snoqualmie Pass north through the Cascades. So this is going to bring some snowfall through the higher terrain of northeast Washington, Idaho, and Montana as well. And you can see the convergence zone signature there setting up for this evening, and that wanes by Saturday morning as we dry out before that next weak system comes in on Monday. So these are precipitation totals. You can see very low for the Puget Sound, Oregon through the Willamette Valley. Basically maybe just a trace of rainfall. Oregon coast gets very low amounts. More as you go up towards Quileute there in Washington, and you can see that snowfall going through the higher terrain of the Rockies out there. And here's snowfall totals. You can see why they have the winter weather advisory for the Cascade areas, Snoqualmie Pass north. Not a big event coming up here for Snoqualmie Pass, so travel should be okay through there. And again, the snowfall totals out onto the east. And here we go. Here's the wide view here. Let's go till current here. And you can see that Arctic air all the way down into Texas here. Here's Washington, Oregon, California, British Columbia. You can see our ridge is kind of flattened out a bit here. It's allowing our system to move through today. Again, it is very weak. And you can see this warm air out in front of that system on the east coast. There's this Arctic air masses all the way out across Canada. And put this into motion here, and you can see this ridge starts to redevelop here before this next system here on Monday. You can see it back here. Tries to get into our area. It's going to bring a very weak frontal system through the areas. Our ridge stays parked offshore here. And you can see the very warm temperatures through Nevada, California, all the way up into eastern Oregon even. And the east slopes of the Rockies warm up a bit here on into these next few days as that Arctic air gets shunted off to the east. And now look at this ridge just taking up residence. After this weak system Monday, we really go dry for a while. And it's just not allowing any systems to get into our area. And this ridge retrogrades a little bit here in the extended on both the European and the GFS. And you'll notice a little bit of cold air get down behind that. And this is really our only hope for getting some active weather in here, is this ridge to retrograde and allow some systems to come down out of the north. This is pretty far off into the future, so I'm a little bit encouraged. Just this signal has the ridge retrograding a little bit and some cold air coming over the top of it. So that's good enough for now, but again, it doesn't show any strong systems as of right now. And we'll go ahead and take a look at precipitation. You can see that the storm track is going to be focused mainly north of Vancouver Island, along the British Columbia coast through southeast Alaska. The southern coast of Alaska is really going to be targeted, and we're getting very low precipitation amounts for normal this time of year. And you can see eastern Washington basically getting no precipitation. Areas of eastern Oregon very light. California nothing basically. Also, except maybe the very higher terrain until in the extended, which is so far out in the GFS that it's not reliable. Here's the European model here too, and this shows our system moving through now, just a fairly weak system for us. And the one moves through Monday, another very weak frontal system, and then we dry out, and that ridge just takes residence up off the coastline there. And the model's acting a little bit wonky here too. It's jumping ahead a bit, but you see from 150 to 240. That ridge does retrograde a bit, and just the slightest hope for some kind of activity coming down out of the north here into western Washington. So that's what we're watching for now. And again, here's looking at the European model. You can see today's frontal system with the mountain snows and the low precipitation amounts. The weak system moves there through Monday, and then we really dry out as that ridge takes up residence offshore. But here's the 6 to 10 day outlook. You can see the above average temperatures for California, and as the ridge takes, residence offshore here, we just really start to warm up quite a bit. Hopefully it's not going to be too foggy, but we'll see how that goes once we get closer. And you can see the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook much below average for the west and much above average for Alaska. Notice that as that storm track is really pointed northward towards southeast Alaska, and Alaska coming here in the next week or so. So if you guys have any more feedback you'd like to leave me, just put it in the comments and I'll go ahead and try to comply with that. I'm also working on a Puget Sound convergent zone video. I'll put that in an educational series. And I'm also working on a Madden-Julian oscillation video, and I'll try to explain how that affects our weather here in the Pacific Northwest. So hopefully you guys are liking these videos, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks.